Hello, it's Simon here. Before we board the Giddy Carousel of Pop, I just wanted to let you know that we had some technical issues during the recording of this episode, and not one, but two of our three microphones stopped working, so the final 3 minutes are a bit lo-fi, but hopefully that won't spoil or impair your ride on the carousel. Here we go. Hello and welcome aboard the Giddy Carousel of Pop. This is a podcast all about the Now magazine for pure pop people, better known to you and me as Smash Hits, the music magazine which ran from 1978 to 2006. And what we do is take an old issue of the mag and have a good look through it. I'm Simon Galloway, and with me as ever is Gavin Hogg.
Hello, and hello to everyone in Norway.
Oh yes, hello.
We're currently number one in the Norwegian charts, so thank you if you're listening over there.
The giddy pop capital of the world.
Absolutely.
And our guest waiting to join us on the carousel is an academic, the author of several books about pop music and culture, and he's also a radio broadcaster to boot, Simon Philo.
Hello, thanks for the invitation to ride.
Welcome along. Now, Simon has chosen the issue that we're looking at today, which takes us all the way back to February 1979, issue 4 to be precise, which was the last monthly edition of The Hits before it went fortnightly. And if you want to read along with us, you can do just that thanks to a couple of amazing websites, Brian McCloskey's Like Punk Never Happened, or the Smash Hits Remembered website. You'll find links to this edition in the show notes, along with Spotify and YouTube playlists that feature pretty much all the songs and artists featured in this issue of Smash Hits. And you'll also find these links on our website, giddypoppod.home.blog, and on our Twitter and Facebook feeds. Just search for the Giddy Carousel of Pop or at giddypoppod. Now, it becomes quite obvious very quickly that this issue was actually published in January 1979. So it's that old magazine industry thing of putting the next month's date on the cover that's clouding the issue of when this one actually came out. So before we clamber aboard the carousel, let's set the scene and find out what each of us was up to in January 1979. Gavin.
Okay, so at this time I would have just been coming up to my 9th birthday. We'd not long moved from Leamington to Solihull in the Midlands. And music was very much at the periphery of my life then. I'd only bought my first single with my own money was earlier on in 1978, A Taste of Aggro by Barron Knights. Top of the pop staples. And, you know, I liked the comedy and novelty kind of songs at that age. So I only had 3 records. I had the Barron Knights single that I bought myself. A couple of years earlier, my auntie Beryl had bought me the Wurzels' brand new Combine Harvester, 7-inch. And my granddad had given me a Reader's Digest Jim Reeves flexi disc. So I had one flexi, but it wasn't a cool indie band or a punk band, it was Jim Reeves. So that was it. And my mum had an old record player from the 50s that did, 16, 33, 45, 78. But my mum was born severely deaf. However, she liked Nina and Frederick, if any listeners have heard of them, who were a kind of quite mainstream, folky act from Scandinavia in the, I think, late 50s, early 60s. So she had a lot of their EPs and a load of Gilbert and Sullivan operas, like LPs. But that was the musical inheritance that I'd got. So for that reason, music was not really a massive part of my life. I was more really into, collecting football stickers and Subbuteo and riding my bike around. However, probably the main way I had of listening to music, because we didn't even have a radio in the house at that time, it was another year or two before I started listening to radio more and watching Top of the Pops. I'd watch it occasionally, but it wasn't appointment TV at that age. But the house next door to us, it was a little semi-detached house, and there was Eileen and her daughter Julie, who was 3 or 4 years older than me. So, quite cool when you're an 8-year-old lad, there's a 12-year-old girl living next to you. And we kind of shared the wall, as it were. She was on the other side of the wall, and she had a lot of friends round, after school in the afternoons and the evenings. And they would play, the main 2 records I remember, in fact, probably the only 2 records they played were Dean Friedman's Well Said the Rocking Chair, which had Lucky Stars on it, which I knew from telly and radio. So they used to play that a lot. And Grease, anything with Olivia or Travolta on, they'd play. So I would listen to a lot of stuff. And then they'd talk to me through the wall. I was like a bit of a novelty, this kid who lives on the other side of the wall.
Sounds like a good setup for a kids' TV series.
It was, yeah, very much so, yeah. So she was really my main conduit for listening to new music at that time. As I say, it would be another couple of years before I started buying Smash Hits, and probably even from this date, from this magazine that we're looking at, it was probably another year before I started taping things. I didn't get a tape player until a bit later on, and then taping stuff. So I'm aware of, obviously all the acts that are in there. I've heard most of the records that we're talking about retrospectively, but at the time, probably not so much really. That's where I was at then.
Okay. And Simon, what about yourself?
Okay, so I was 12 and a half at Christmas, 1978, 79. And I was just coming off the back of a year which had seen me starting to more persistently purchase records and take more interest in music. I bought my first single in 1974, but I wouldn't say that I was a regular buyer until 1978. So 78, the year of 78, partly for the reasons you were talking about as well, because Grease, for example, was such a big thing, and Saturday Night Fever as well. It was just everywhere. And I'm sure that played its part in bringing more music into the house. My father wasn't particularly interested in music, but my mum very much was. And so she had Saturday Night Fever, she had Grease, she had Arrival by ABBA. And I think that kind of inspired me as well to get involved and get interested in music. I wasn't buying lots of singles, but I was taping. No one's listening to this, are they? I was taping a lot.
You killed music.
I did. I was responsible for killing music, I must admit. But obviously I was very selective because at this time, proper nice stereo sound was only available if you were home taping at certain times in the week. Hence the chart show's appeal, I think, I think it had just gone to 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, so 2 hours of...
Yeah, when it switched over to VHF.
And that was happening as well. I think Simon Bates took over in the summer of 1978, so there was a ready supply of singles, because I was very much all about singles. I did buy a few albums, but so I'd say that 78 was really the beginning of my record buying, and that's why I was kind of also interested in this particular edition, because obviously a lot of it is retrospective. It's kind of looking back on what a wonderful year 78 was. So I'd have to agree with that, really. But yeah, so I was at school, and we talked about school days as well. I'd moved schools. I was going to a school that was quite a way away from where I lived. I wasn't boarding or anything like that, but it was a long journey. And the people who used to take me, because my parents didn't take me, some neighbours took me, they had one mixtape. And that mixtape was a particular week in 1978. So every morning, and this carried on for not just 1978, but 79, they only had one tape, and it was a week that had Dancing in the City and Car 67. And so I got to know those songs really well. Didn't do any harm, because I think 78 is still probably my favourite year for pop. So another reason for choosing January 1979.
And was Smash Hits on your radar at all?
Most definitely, yes. I was kind of waiting. I didn't know it at the time. I was waiting for Smash Hits. As a boy who liked pop music, it was ideal, really, because you could, obviously there were, and I occasionally did buy Look In, there were magazines that were kind of pop focused, but they tended to be kind of girl focused as well. So to have a magazine that was actually committed to pop and to appreciate pop from a perspective, I mean, not that it was gendered necessarily, but it kind of welcomed onto the carousel. It welcomed lads who liked pop as well, because there wasn't really a place that you could find that kind of spoke to you about pop if you were a boy that liked pop and you were in your teens. You couldn't go to NME, you couldn't go to Melody Maker, because they simply weren't interested in pop. So that's one of the reasons why, as I say, I was waiting for Smash Hits and bought it from the very first edition.
Yeah. As for me, I was 5 years old when this edition of Smash Hits came out. So this is right at the outer edge of my memory that I can recall. But my sister was buying Smash Hits at this time. She was buying it from issue 1, and she's 6 years older than me, and we were sharing a bedroom at this time, bunk beds. So she had this pile of Smash Hits in the bedroom, and looking through this and some others from other issues from around this time, it's a really strong recall, just really like just being plunged back into that bedroom. We lived in a semi-detached Victorian house in Sheffield, very damp and cold, no central heating. And my recollections of these, that I may have not even thought about for years, just absolutely plunged straight back there in such a strong way that it's been, quite strange. Looking back at
and it was a very cold winter as well.
It was a cold winter.
Incredibly cold.
Yeah, Bicycle Race by Queen had been in the charts at the end of 78. And I remember that because it was the coldest winter that we'd had since, the coldest winter of the 70s and the coldest winter, I think, since 1962, 63. And we had this big, long line of icicles that had formed outside the living room window. And so we used to sing Icicle Race, not Bicycle Race.
See, pop can do that. It can do the Proustian rush thing. It can, the Smash Hits can do that as well, can't it?
Yeah. So Smash Hits was very much part of my growing awareness of pop music that was happening at that time. I was no stranger to music. I'd always been obsessed as a kid. I'm youngest of 5 kids, so I'd inherited lots of records as siblings had grown tired of them and just left them somewhere, and I'd just go around like a little magpie scavenging these things up. But for Christmas that year, one of my brothers bought me a record box, so a singles box that held 50 singles, and in it were 2 records to get me going. It was Taste of Aggro by the good old Baronites.
Good entry-level stuff there.
Yeah. And the other one was Christmas in Smurfland, the Smurfs. And so they were the first 2 singles in the box. And I decided that the other records I'd got couldn't go in this box. Weren't allowed. It had to be new stuff that I was getting from then on. So it was my first year at infant school. And walking down to school every day, I was going past the newsagent who had an ex-jukebox singles rack, a little carousel thing. And so several times a week, I would go in there and buy a single. And that's how I started growing my collection. By the end of the year, the box that would hold 50 singles was full. And it was all stuff from 1979.
From the Giddy Carousel.
From the Giddy Carousel, indeed. The Giddy Carousel of the newsagents. So these things that I'd previously been aware of that all seemed to be, music just kind of existed and Top of the Pops just kind of existed. But it was reading the Smash Hits was helping me bring it all together. So I was starting to get this wider awareness of what it was all about. So I would say that, 1979 was year 0 for me in terms of deciding what I liked and going out and buying that. So even though it's at the outer edges of my memory, this is where it all starts for me in 1979 with Smash Hits and that empty record box that I soon filled up. So let's get stuck into this edition of Smash Hits. It's just 32 pages, so it's a very slim issue, and I think it's very much in embryonic form. But there's a little giveaway. Well, it's not a giveaway at all. It's quite explicit. When you look on the contents page, there's a little note here from the editor, Chris Hall, which was Nick Logan under a pseudonym. And he teases that there's going to be some big news at the beginning of his editor's letter. And then he gets to it at the end there. Right then, here's the big news. Starting from the next issue on sale Feb 8th, Smash Hits will become a fortnightly publication. That is, you'll be able to buy Smash Hits every 2 weeks instead of waiting a whole month. We've got some amazing ideas lined up to hit you with throughout 1979, and believe us, Smash Hits is going to be the hottest pop magazine there's ever been. And he really wasn't wrong.
No, I think it's all right. Yeah. It makes good on its promise, I think, doesn't it, really, there?
Yeah. So,
and even though maybe amazing, sensational and outrageous things are not to be found in this particular edition.
Not this particular edition, no. It's quite safe and stayed.
But he's not wrong about what lies ahead, really.
Yeah. But we'll come on more to that because there's other parts of this issue that point the way to where Smash Hits would go. So the front cover, we've got new wave nerd Elvis Costello kind of giving us his best sulky stare against a very vivid yellow background, and win 10 Elvis Costello albums. I'll just notice this edition cost 25p. It's got a whopping words to 18 top singles in there. And also you've got features on Elton John, Rachel Sweet, Funkadelic, and a colour poster of The Clash.
Strangely not, so we're talking about this, strangely not a feature on Elvis Costello, who is the cover star.
Yeah.
He's everywhere else in it. He's in the magazine in various places, isn't he?
Yeah, and so you look to find what's going on with Elvis Costello. You get a few pages in, and it's been copies of his album and a radio cassette player.
You'd be disappointed as a Costello fan, wouldn't you?
Yeah. There's a gig review which is in the gossip section, which we may get to later on.
Yes,
but yes, it's strange that there's no feature on Elvis. I think.
But that seems to be the thing. I think the very first issue, which was not even considered issue 1, but it was the pilot edition, got Plastic Bertrand on the front, and that was Win the Album. So it wasn't even a feature. So yeah, the features in this are quite slim when we get to them. But as it says, there's 18 song words in there. And in 32 pages, that means they're really, really cramming them in. So we get, first of all, Leo Sayer, Rain in My Heart, a cover of the Buddy Holly song. So I think Leo is struggling a bit on the Giddy Carousel at this point. He's had a big hit in 76 with You Make Me Feel Like Dancing. And then he's on, he's off. I think his career would be quite patchy.
Transatlantic number 1 in 77 with When I Need You as well. It was number 1 in both. But yeah, maybe Dumper is calling.
Yeah, because once you hit the new decade, some of his singles don't even reach the charts.
But he does, and I remember this, he has a TV series in the UK in 83 and 84. So light entertainment.
Light entertainment
beckons for Leo. Now an Aussie, apparently.
Yeah, and if you check out the video playlist, so we put together a playlist of all the songs that are mentioned in the magazine, and it's very Top of the Pops heavy, it leans on that. It starts off with Leo, of course, because he's the first song in the magazine. He's wearing a lovely Starsky and Hutch style cardigan in there, so that's something to look out for. And then next lyric, King Rocker by Generation X. Again, a band that I only knew from looking at the pages of Smash Hits, wouldn't have really heard this song, possibly would have seen it on Top of the Pops. But that would have been as far as it went for me.
Well, that Top of the Pops performance is a memorable Top of the Pops performance, one of those ones you talk about afterwards, and it's because Billy Idol's miming is atrocious. It was so bad that it was a topic of conversation the day afterwards. So it wasn't maybe the one that Billy Idol would have wanted people to be sort of talking about afterwards, but a very memorable performance of King Rocker, because he is just, I don't know what he's on, but he is so behind in terms of the miming. It's risible.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what you would expect from a band that would be considered a punk band. They're not giving it all that, are they?
No,
see that performance again.
He's just the kind of cartoon sort of punk that was made for Smash Hits in some ways, and Smash Hits readers. But I think, Top of the Pops, talking about Top of the Pops, I mean, their favourites seem to be Sham 69, so they were always on. So a particular kind of punk was obviously acceptable at the BBC.
When I looked at the lyrics, I'd not realised before, it's a song about Elvis having a fight with John Lennon, isn't it? To see who's the best, who's the King Rocker. And that passed me by. So, like you say, not a very punk thing maybe to sing about, really.
No, it's not singing about anarchy. And
then obviously Tony James was in them, and it seemed like at the time when Dissect Sputnik came out, it felt like it was a long Generation X was so long ago, but looking back now, it's only a matter of a few years, really, isn't it? Whatever it is. But then I was looking at a picture of Dissect Sputnik, and I can't remember, was it Neil X, I think, had a big, blonde quiff, just like Billy Idol. And I was like, oh, yeah, there's a link there, with Dissect Sputnik. But
I think at this time, I mean, what Smash Hits needs is a pop star. A real pop star. Okay, maybe Billy Idol wasn't that. Or maybe he would become that. But I guess in a way, they might be casting around for, who can we kind of pick? Who can we choose so that we don't have to have Elvis Costello on the front or whatever.
You do get that feeling as well, because the song lyrics that are in there are from quite a wide variety of styles. Leo Sayer, Generation X, Olivia Newton John, Frankie Miller, Shalimar, Nick Lowe, and it kind of carries on like that. You even get Manhattan Transfer and what's his name, Gerard Kenny, New York. So it doesn't quite have the vision yet. And also, you do have this, it's January 79, and you must remember what it used to be like. The top 40 after Christmas was a bit like a no man's land.
Yeah.
Because you still had those songs hanging around that had been the big Christmas hits. So
it didn't move much.
Yeah, it'd be Mary's Boy Child was the big one for Christmas 78. And when you look at the top 40, those first few weeks of January, there's not a lot happening. So it's almost like with these lyrics, they're sort of like mopping up the things that they maybe haven't covered yet or that aren't necessarily Christmas, although you do get a Christmas song in here. The lyrics for the Eagles' Christmas.
It's like the drawing a line and then like after this, right, we're going to start properly, you know.
Yeah, so it is tying up the loose ends of 78, I think, with the lyrics there. But yeah, you get Olivia Newton John. And like you said earlier, absolutely inescapable, the whole Grease thing in 1978, along with Saturday Night Fever. And I do distinctly remember those songs from Grease just being on top of the pops forever and a day. It'd just be, Summer Nights again. The
OMJ songs are written by the same person, John Farrar, who wrote You're the One That I Want. So the one that's featured in this particular edition as well. Again, I mean, this is about Smash. It's not Top of the Pops necessarily, but when that famous Boomtown Rats, when Rat Trap gets to number one, what does Bob Geldof do on, he tears this is very good for podcasts, obviously. He tears a photo of Travolta, doesn't he? At the beginning of the song, because they have dethroned the King and Queen of Pop in 1978. This was November 1978. Yeah. And in a way, the Rats, pretty similar to Billy Idol and Generation X. They were kind of smash hits, kind of appropriate, kind of punk.
The acceptable face of
pop punk, And one of the first albums I had was Tonic for the Troops. They were my first kind of love, really, the Rats. But it could have been Gen X easily.
Yeah. Well, just tying it back to some recent news. So it's beginning of 2020 when we sat down recording this. And in the New Year's Honours list of 1979, Olivia Newton John was made an OBE. And in the New Year's Honours list for 2019, she's been made a Dame. Yeah. So
not before time.
Yeah, so just tying it together there with a little thread in time there for Olivia Newton John.
And of course, at 78, she was arguably the biggest pop star alongside Travolta on the planet, And then a few years later, Physical would be the biggest selling single in America in 1981. So not Dumper Bound.
No, not at all.
Not joining Leo Sayer.
Of course, disco was big news. It is quite prominent as you work through this edition of the hits, which, well, as we come to it, here's their review of 1978. And it's split into two sections. You get disco and soul, and then you get it split into rock and pop. So Cliff White, who was a writer for The NME, takes care of disco and soul, and that was very much his bag. He was very much into James Brown, all the P-Funk kind of stuff. And so this is the kind of stuff that he looks at and wouldn't necessarily be in the sorts of things that would have been appearing in the charts. I mean, One Nation Under a Groove, you've got that in there. He mentions Earth, Wind and Fire, the Commodores, but some of the stuff, it seems quite off the radar in terms of
Stargard, for example.
In terms of what should be in a pop magazine.
Yeah, I think Which Way Is Up, was it used for Soul Train or something? It was one of kind of the title song for that. So Stargard, for example, wouldn't be familiar, certainly to me reading it at that particular moment in time, because they weren't in our charts. And Radio, perhaps that's coming a bit later. Radio, is that Jack and Jill? You can tell that Cliff White is an aficionado, can't you? You can tell he's kind of, that's his thing, particularly the kind of P-Funk side of things as well.
At the beginning, he talks about some movies, and I'd not heard of one of them. He talks about Saturday Night Fever and Grease, which obviously we all know about, but Thank God It's Friday. He's saying it's one of the big three movies of the year. I don't remember that at all. Does anyone remember what that was?
Maybe he's bigging up its role.
Starred Diana Ross?
Yeah, I think he mentions it later on. He says that she was in it. Yeah, yes.
More of a kind of collection of performances rather than
rather than a movie? Okay,
a movie.
That makes sense.
But yeah, no. Of the what do they call it? He calls them Tower Infernos of disco on screen. The lesser of the three, I think. Clearly. Although he includes Grease in that, doesn't he? But
I think the glaring omission for me in this one is he doesn't mention Chic, who had been quite big in 78, and they
79 is a bigger year for them, I think. But that does seem a bit odd. But again, as an aficionado, maybe he's making some kind of judgment about what is and what isn't good.
So he's preferring the Commodores over Chic.
Well, yeah, maybe he's thinking of Brick House rather than Three Times a Lady, which was a massive hit in 78, wasn't it? I should say that I think he gets it a bit wrong in terms of they're pretty good at their predictions in some ways, but when he says that disco is receiving some slow acceptance from the suspicious rock fraternity, well, 1979 would see the rock fraternity fight back and effectively kill off disco.
Yeah, well, certainly in America, that's when the whole disco sucks.
Yeah, the Comiskey Park thing in exploding records in front of thousands of people, the disco records and riots and things like that. So the death of disco, really.
But I wouldn't have thought that that necessarily had an impact on how disco was received in the UK.
No, perhaps not. No, I think it was something, as you say, that was largely confined. But it was something that related to the rock press, and the rock press on both sides of the Atlantic tend to have the same kind of view and same kind of attitudes, i.e. anti-disco. But no, I don't. As we've said, Chic have a massive year in 1979, and what will be the first big hit of 1979? It will be Heart of Glass. So perhaps not. No, but by the end of 1979, disco is finished, really, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly disco, how we knew it.
Yeah.
So I was looking back. There's a list on the internet of all the cover stars of the NME. It doesn't necessarily have images of those covers, but it's got a list of them all. And I went through 1978 and looking at all the artists that were featured. And not a single artist on there could be even remotely considered disco and soul. So this really seems to be its only way of getting some outlet in the press. And then it's had to be the pop press that's covered this aspect of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And why not as well? I mean, if they do make a good point about the Rolling Stones, for example, and Miss You, which is, and again, we see that with Blondie as well. Kind of, these are a rock band or a new wave band who are
doing a crossover,
So they clearly haven't got a problem with disco. The only people who've got a problem with disco are the rock press.
And then you move on to the roundup of rock and pop songs from 1978. Again, penned by Chris Hall, Nick Logan, under his pseudonym. And I think he's more on the money with his look back at the year, and it certainly points the way forwards as to where smash hits would be going, and they do that with the list of their top 45s of 1978 in no particular order of preference. And I think this really it's almost like the manifesto for what smash hits was going to become. They were staking their claim, marking out their territory, and saying, this is what we're going to do. Because on that list of 45s there, you get Blondie alongside Buzzcocks, Bee Gees, The Clash, Elvis Costello, a lot of disco things on the list as well. So it's really mixing up the new wave and the disco that would really form what was going to be in the pages of smash hits from here on in.
I think that's what I was saying at the beginning about why it was so appealing, why smash hits were so appealing to me. Because I think most people aren't as tribal as maybe the rock press, for example, imagines. And I think the smash hits embrace, what do they say? There's so much good music and so many different shades. Make your own list. It'll be the perfect choice. That's fantastic. Oh, that's that fantastic thing to write. There's a license to like what you want it to like and not be kind of dictated to. And also rock and pop is alongside disco, and it's all pop. The thing about this also is it's about singles.
So yeah, I think Nick Logan pretty much on the money with what he writes in looking back at 1978 and marking out smash hits territory. He's drawing that line. This is ours. This is what we do.
Just going back to the link between smash hits and singles, I interviewed Mark Ellen once about Word magazine, and I remember him saying that the magazines that he'd been involved with, they always had to be kind of like a technological or a physical object to kind of go alongside it. So he said that when they'd launched Word, it was when like MP3 players and iPods were coming out, and Mojo was all about kind of box sets and fitting into that, and Q was CDs. And although it wouldn't have been sort of explicitly done, obviously Smash Hits really built on the success of the single and the fact that, like you said, there were so many great singles. And Smash Hits would never work 5 years earlier when it was all about albums and stuff, and it had to be. It was just the time was right, really, wasn't it? It was a fertile period for singles, and Smash Hits just was the right time, right place, wasn't it?
Really interesting. I think that's what makes this edition of Smash Hits so important, in that it is the last of the monthly issues. He says it's going to be fortnightly, and he's looking back at 78 and he's just picking out all those popular songs from the year. You like these? Well,
yeah.
This is the sort of thing that we're going to be covered. So, in a way, a pivotal issue of the hits. So let's move on now to one of the features. And the features do seem quite light in the way that they're written. But this is a little feature on Rachel Sweet, who was in the charts around this time with her cover of the Stax tune Baby, or B-A-B-Y, Baby. She was 16 years old when she had a hit with that. On Stiff Records, part of the Stiff tour that travelled around the country by train, and it's got little.
There's another Elvis Costello connection as well, isn't it? Everything is he's plugged into everything in some way, but not actually himself is being featured.
It's got a little picture of her on the train doing her homework because she doesn't leave school until she's 18, so she's got to keep up with lessons there. But
there's a rather dodgy video. She's wearing like what appears to be a school uniform in the video for BABY.
It is a little bit questionable, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, bearing in mind that she's 16 years old and she's kind of vamping it up to the camera a little bit.
Yeah.
But also what struck me listening to it is how country she sounds. And it's no surprise when you read through the piece that when she was 12 years old, she was basically making country records in Nashville. It just seems curious that she's hitting the charts here with soul songs. I think she did a cover of I Go to Pieces, the Northern Soul tune, and there's a version of Everlasting Love as well.
I mean, at the time, I have to admit, Rachel Sweet just completely passed me by.
Yeah.
I mean, this song was, this BABY just about scraped into the top 40, and that was it, wasn't it? I mean, nobody ever heard from her. The interesting things about her are kind of who produces the next album, which is Martin Rushent. Apparently she ended up graduating from Columbia University, and she's a big wheel in TV, American TV now.
Yeah,
or something.
I was going to say, well, I had a quick look online. She's doing all right because it said in 2010.
I'm glad about that.
She sold a house called Los Pavoreales, which used to be Madonna's home. She sold it for $4,895,000.
Okay.
So I don't think she's short of a bob or two.
No,
so
not at all.
So let's not worry about the fact she didn't really have any big hits.
And then you get on to some more lyrics and going full on disco for these two. You've got Destiny by the Jacksons and September by Earth, Wind and Fire. A song that was always special to me because they're singing it about my birthday. Do you remember the 21st night of September? Well, of course I do. It's my birthday. Thank you, Earth, Wind and Fire.
Fantastic. I'll never forget your birthday from now on.
Yeah. I do like it's putting the lyrics here to, was it ba-do, ooh, ba-do-do-do. So you can never accuse Smash Hits of missing out any vocal refrains.
I was quite grateful for that. I think that because me and my brother used to do kind of performances for our parents. And whilst we were better mimers probably than Billy Idol, we were, we needed to know the words. Yeah. So, and we used Smash Hits lyrics for that purpose. So we needed every single detail.
So even if when Maurice White's, what you think he's doing a bit of vocal improvisation, you've got it all written down there.
Exactly, yeah. We couldn't do the levitation and all that kind of stuff that they used to do with their spectacular stage.
We need to just mention the video briefly as well. Psychedelic
yes.
Aztecs from Space, ahoy!
Yeah,
they're amazing.
What is that? What is that effect?
It's just a weird,
because that was everywhere.
Yeah, yes, it's kind of like a video feedback effect. So, so you see it
Comet's Tail or something.
Yeah, Kenny Everett was always doing it.
That Kenny Everett show was.
Yeah, so you'd see it probably first of all in something like Bohemian Rhapsody. It was used as a special effect quite a lot in Doctor Who. The opening, the
Top of the Pops would end up using it.
Yeah.
With their in-studio performances as well, wouldn't they?
On Doctor Who, they would use it as part of the opening sequence.
Of course, yeah.
You've got the full colour glory of Earth, Wind and Fire. I've forgotten all about the Egyptian theme going on there. Although Maurice White does look as though he's wearing some sort of baseball or American football inspired Egyptian design. So, he's channeling a couple of different things there.
The Jacksons, whose lyrics are on the same page for Destiny, in the video to that, they are dressed in a very similar way, and they're dressed in a similar way to Funkadelic as well. So there is a kind of...
but
there's a fashion.
There is, but the Jacksons are their flares are questionable, I would say. Funkadelic and Earth, Wind and Fire are getting away with it because they're being outlandish, top to toe. The Jacksons, it's a bit kind of experimental and jazzy on top, but the strides are a little bit pedestrian.
Not surprising, really, because the Jacksons are just flexing and just reaching out on their own. At this point, they're kind of going their own way. They've left Motown, and actually, I've got a soft spot for this because Destiny was one of those first albums I bought. And
of course, later that year, get Off the Wall, Michael Jackson, which... Would you consider that disco or not? Or is that another thing? The whole Quincy Jones thing. It seems like it's almost like a level above.
Yeah.
So you've got Quincy Jones doing Michael Jackson, Brothers Johnson, George Benson, all within the next couple of years.
I mean, Destiny featured Shake Your Body Down to the Ground, which is or Blame It on the Boogie, which is classic disco songs, aren't they, really? But I know what you mean. I mean, there's something a little bit more polished about Off the Wall, a bit more produced.
So it didn't necessarily get hit by the whole disco sucks thing. It's sort of like, they were beyond that in a way.
No. Obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, we know that's probably not the case, is it? That actually Jackson kind of rides it out, really.
Yeah.
Jacksons don't, but probably because Michael Jackson goes solo.
Yeah. And we get to another feature, this one about Elton John and his relationship with Rod Stewart. Who is Sharon and why is Phyllis saying such wicked things about him? But I think before we discuss the article itself, I think it's possibly the photos of Elton John. Guessing is at his home?
I guess so, yeah.
I'm not sure whether it is or not. But
who else would have a house like that? The big pop art.
Well, the fact that it looks like it did makes me believe that it can't be someone's house. But anyway, they're obviously Smash Hits are obviously pleased with it because it appears at the end, doesn't it?
Yes, they have a full colour shot
full colour on the back
of Elton. So I think what we're seeing here is the effects of Elton's buying or purchasing addiction, as I think he later acknowledged. So there's lots of artworks dotted around, lamps, a designer, coffee table. There's all sorts of things going on. A little samurai model that Elton's posing next to. And we were trying to find out what some of these things were.
Yeah, because if you look on the back, there's a full colour picture of him looking very much like the spoiled younger son of a Russian mafia don, like in baseball cap and trainers. And there's a strange, sort of quite surreal looking picture to the left as you look at the photo. Couldn't work out. It looks a bit Dali-ish, but it's not. I don't think it's a Dali.
No.
There's it looks like a kind of an ape in a suit gazing out across a surreal landscape. I don't know what the hell's going on. It's very odd. I wanted to find out more, but I don't think we did put a thing on Twitter, but I don't think anyone could quite identify it.
We got a few suggestions.
We've got some leads.
And I've still not been able to actually qualify them. But the coffee table, which is, it's a glass coffee table, but the legs are a body of a person. So it's somebody on all fours with the glass coffee table on top. That apparently is by a designer called Alan Jones.
Yes.
I found that out because on the internet, you'll find that when Elton auctioned off all his belongings and possessions and things in the late 80s, you can still get hold of the catalogue, the auction catalogue. In the one that's called, let me see in my notes here, Diverse Collections, is pretty much all the stuff that was in these shots here. But the only one that I could actually definitely find the name of was that coffee table. So suggestions for that drawing, that illustration on the wall, a French animation artist called René Laloux.
Okay.
Which kind of made sense a little bit because there was something about it that reminded me of Terry Gilliam.
Yes.
So it got that going on. But I wondered if it could be an artist called Alan Aldridge, who did the artwork for Elton's album Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. And he did all those, there was a Beatles illustrated lyrics book.
Oh, I know the one you mean, yeah.
Did all the drawings in there. So I wondered if it could be something by that guy. But we don't know for sure. If you're having a look, it's on the scans of the magazine. It's on page 15, or you can look at the back cover. It's in colour there. You get it in a bit more detail, a bit closer in. So, dear listener, if you do know who the artist is...
It's competition time.
Competition time. The prize is absolutely nothing, just the glory that you can reflect in if you can correctly identify the rather odd and surreal painting that Elton is posing next to. Well, next to him and the little samurai doll that he's with.
It's just a ghastly mismatched.
It really is
It's
terrible.
awful.
There's no style or taste there at all.
No,
is it?
it's nothing like there's a collection being curated here. It's just stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever the opposite of curate is what's happened there.
Yeah,
It's worth remembering that Elton's all over the place at this moment. He's seriously struggling, isn't he, with exhaustion and other kind of
it makes
issues.
Makes reference to cancelling a tour due to exhaustion.
Yeah.
And if you've seen the Rocket Man film, we probably know know what exhaustion means.
I think if it had been several years later in Smash Hits, it would have had exhaustion.
Exhaustion.
Definitely. A couple of quote marks around it.
Yeah, they're not quite as confident at this point about,
It's discussing his relationship with Rod Stewart in this one. Don't there's any choice quotes that you want to pull out from this one?
It's not a particularly long article, and a good half of it is taken up with his relationship with Rod Stewart, and it just seems like an interesting, particularly as Rod isn't there. I remember in later years, Morrissey did a great one with Pete Burns where they were on the cover together, but they were there together and talking about their relationship, and it was really funny. But this is just some stuff that Elton's saying about Rod. They say stuff like, so it says, according to Elton, Rod's very funny, he makes me laugh, and I don't think he often realises how funny he is. He's the old tart and I'm the vicar's wife. That's how I think of us in a way. Interesting. I call him Tesco and he calls me the Rover 2000. You know, once that is clean once a day and then put back in the garage. Yeah, it's an odd one. Yeah. I don't quite... I was looking through...
it sticks. It does stick, it does stick with them because they continue to relate to each other exactly that way, apparently, in terms of those names, Sharon and Phyllis.
I was going to say, I popped into supermarket this morning. I was doing a bit of shopping, and I saw the Elton John autobiography. And I just thought, I wonder if there's much about Rod Stewart. And there's a few bits, and there's a bit that I remember where it's talking about his marriage. When did he marry Renate? Was it about 83?
Yeah, mid-80s.
Like mid-80s. Yeah. And he says in there that Rod couldn't attend the wedding, but he'd sent a telegram to him. He said it said something like, "I know you're still standing, but the rest of us are on the fucking floor." I thought that was a great line. Yeah. Maybe reference there to people's surprise at Elton settling down, you know?
Yeah. I mean, certainly he was quite an unpleasant character in the 70s, if you read other interviews with him. Yeah. So he's slagging off David Bowie, having a go at lots of other people. So in this one, this is actually him being quite kind, I think. This is Elton on a good day. It doesn't say who's written the piece.
No.
So I was wondering if it's not actually a piece that they've gone out and got, or whether it's been some quotes have been supplied to them and they've kind of constructed a feature around that. It's not really asking questions, it's just Elton talking, which kind of makes me a little bit suspicious that it's...
Quite interesting. Elton didn't much care for Brit Eklund, apparently, but he does like Alana, Rod's latest wife. That proposed film they were talking about, which presumably never came
Oh, yes, I was wondering about that. They talk about that quite a bit. It sounds quite like it could have been quite fun.
It could have been, It could have been, And also, he said, I could never go back to touring on a grand scale. Exactly,
Roll on the 80s.
Exactly,
when he was touring on a grand scale.
But he is in a bad place at this time. He's actually, in terms of his commercial success, he's actually for him, a pretty bad place as well, really, isn't he? Because, Song for Guy was pretty dreary. And,
I mean, it's a decent-sized hit, but in terms of whether it's an enjoyable pop song or not.
I mean, given that you mentioned Captain Fantastic, I mean, those run of albums in the early to mid-70s, they all went straight to number one in the States. Single Man, 13 or something like that, peaked in the States. Yeah. I mean, I should imagine there's some concern there. Yeah. Of course, he split up with Taupin as well, so he's not working with him. And Rod actually, he says, Rod kindly pointed out, basically, that I am struggling as a chart act. He says that in the I mean, it may not be an interview. I don't think it is an interview. I think you're right. I think it may well be kind of taken from... There's a famous piece by Charles Shaar Murray around about the same time, I think, which is an extended interview with Elton John. What's interesting about that is just that it's a piece that really tells you much more about Charles Shaar Murray than it does about Elton John. So at least he's allowed to speak for himself, even if he's kind of, even if we're not quite sure what he's saying, what he's trying to express.
Gav, do you want to talk us through the Rod and Elton film that they were proposing?
Oh, sure, yeah. So it says, right now, Elton and Rod are planning a film together that will explore life at the superstar level of the rock business. The idea is to start filming next summer when Rod Stewart has completed his current tour that takes him halfway around the world. Says Elton, the basic idea is of two superstars who are quite friendly, but do everything they can to outdo each other. You could draw parallels with Stewart and myself in that respect, but that's not really what we're like. It'll be a film about the rock business that leans towards the funny side of it and some of the incredible things that go on. For example, if one wife gets a bigger bunch of flowers at the hotel than the other, there's hell to pay, and how they all travel in separate cars and how they might all pretend to like each other but really hate each other. If Rod and myself don't know what goes on around groups and managers and so forth, I can't imagine who does. Yeah, whatever happened to it, I don't know. I mean, it could have been good. It may have been terrible. Quite possibly terrible.
In a way, it does sound very smash hits, and I think whilst the kind of editorial voice that we're familiar with doesn't necessarily come through quite yet, in a way, the kind of Elton is supplying some of that kind of smash hits perspective, that smash hits view on the world.
Yeah. It does sound like it could have been quite self-deprecating, which might have made it quite funny.
I think that's kind of what I mean. Just self-deprecating, funny, the ability to laugh at yourself and not take yourself too seriously. Yeah, and while that might be just a stage, might just caught Elton on a good day, given what we know about his 70s persona. But yeah, I think it struck me as a very smash hits kind of early smash hits, but it was kind of appropriate. As I say, that looking at it alongside this Charles Shaar Murray piece, I think it probably was in the NME about Elton John. It was much more snarky and much more kind of allowing Elton to speak, but in order to kind of ridicule him and kind of hang himself, basically. Yeah. This doesn't do that. It doesn't kind of necessarily...
No, it focuses on the lighter side of things, where he's actually having a bit of fun.
And as I said, I think what Smash Hits is really needs to cement its appeal and success, I think, is a pop star. A pop star who really embodies everything that Smash Hits kind of represents. Not quite got that with Elton, but the kind of things that he talks about are the kind of things that... I think David Hepworth was talking about that in the last episode of Giddy Carousel,
wasn't it? Martin Fry being a pop star.
Good pop star. And we don't have that at this point. Gary Newman's going to come along in a few months, but it's really Adam Ant who kind of brings that, and that's still nearly 2 years away.
Yeah. And then we get a song by Paul Evans, which I don't recall this one at all. Hello, this is Joni.
Oh, I like a phone song. I do like a telephone song.
It's a death disc combined with a phone song.
It is, yeah.
I have a theory about this song.
Go on, then. We'll set up the premise of the song, first of all. So Paul has an argument with his girlfriend, Joni, wants to make amends to her, keeps phoning her, he keeps getting the same phone message. And then by the end of the song, turns out she's dead. And the only way they can carry on hearing her voice is to keep on calling that answer phone.
Well, my theory is, first of all, just look at the stone-cold psychopathic eyes of Paul Evans, for a start.
Right, okay.
Evidence A. Evidence B. Joni came over to my house last night, first verse. I drank a little too much red and we got into a fight. He's a bit of a drinker, he was a bit violent. I don't think Joni's dead. I think she's faked her own death to get away from him. And she's paid a friend to say, just pop round and say, I was in a crash. I don't want to see this guy again. He's a bit weird. In the performance, I guess it's Top of the Pops performance, he never looks at her, does he? We see her, I think she's on closed circuit TV somewhere else in another room, another studio. She's like, I'll come and sing on the song, but I'm not. I don't want to be in the same
as in kind of court case kind of situation.
Exactly,
you don't have the unite in the same room as the accused.
Yeah. Restraining order, perhaps.
Yeah. Could be that, yeah. So, there's no charm. It's a horrible record, isn't it? There's no charm to it at all. No. I love something like Leader of the Pack. I like a good death disc.
Yeah.
A bit of camp to it and a bit of fun and drama and melodrama.
It's a very persistent chorus.
God.
You get the idea after the second time. So you could have skipped a couple of choruses.
Sorry. I'm as sorry as he is, probably more.
Yeah. And even Smash Hits in the lyrics, repeat chorus, repeat chorus twice.
It wasn't one of those songs that we performed for
then we squeezed in a few more lyrics, getting 3 to a page on this one. Who, What, When, Where, Why by the Manhattan Transfer. Can I just say, a couple of years ago, an event I was promoting that Gavin was involved in, actually, we were doing a tribute to Marquis Smith, playing some of his records. And I was promoting it on the usual social media platforms. I'd put the poster for the event on Instagram. I put it on there a couple of times. And both times, a guy called, I think he was called Alan or something like that, liked it. And when I looked at his profile, it says, original founding member of the Manhattan Transfer.
I remember you telling me about that. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
I think it's Alan Paul or something like that. And it's like, wow, can you imagine what the Manhattan Transfer Do the Fall would have been like?
Yeah.
It would have been...
totally wired.
Yeah. Bingo Masters Breakout in 4-part harmony.
Yeah, amazing.
Hit the supper club.
Then we get onto the a couple of pages of gossip, which would eventually, in time, become bits and would have its tongue firmly in its cheek. But at this point, it's more of a straightforward reporting of things that have happened and things that are going to be happening. Starts off with a little look at Elvis Costello's run of gigs at the Dominion. We call it the Dominion Cinema. I know it's a Dominion Theatre, bottom of Tottenham Court Road.
Yeah.
They used to catch the bus around the corner from there for many years. And Elvis is seeing out 1978 with a run of shows there.
It's not gossip, is it? It's a gig review.
Yeah.
There's 2 gig reviews in a row. But again, maybe that Christmas thing meant that there wasn't much to
gossip about.
I don't know.
Something about the tone of Smash Hits at this time, like running through a lot of the issue, is it's very, it's a little bit kind of John Craven's Newsround, a little bit explaining things and almost like reading old sleeve notes or something. Sort of the way it talks about this. A good example here is when it's talking about the Blockheads playing, and it says, like Elvis's Attractions, the Blockheads are a superbly polished band with sax player David Payne outstanding. As for Ian Dury, he's a picture of a man on the ascendant, full of confidence in his ability. It's got that kind of almost local newspaper style to it, hasn't it? You know, I thought that was interesting because obviously its style would really develop over.
Yeah, it hasn't yet found that voice, has it? But you can see it, and you maybe see it in the Elton thing, and you can see it in the editorial at the beginning. You can see some of that, you know, all that stuff about having a cold and you know, I'm writing this, sniff. And so there are bits of it, no pun, but equally, you're right. I think that the tone sometimes is more kind of classic BBC or something.
Yeah, very just informative, but without that humour that developed later.
And then there's a little mention of the Bay City Rollers. It says, for anyone still interested in
so there's a bit of tone there, isn't there?
Yeah,
the
Bay City Rollers. Bay City Rollers are currently in Los Angeles with their new singer. Quite odd finding them in there. I think probably the most poignant part of this is that it mentions a gig that the Clash are doing and donating the money to Sid Vicious for his upcoming court case. This is the beginning of 1979, and by, it was 2nd of February when Sid Vicious...
I presume they got the money back.
Died, well. So that was...
didn't end well.
Yeah, quite interesting to find that in there. It's quite direct with the language that used. The Ex-Pistol is due to appear in court in New York in early 79, charged with murdering his American girlfriend. It'll be an unpleasant and expensive trial. And, of course, it never came to trial. And then you get flashbacks. And looking back, it's talking about the death of Buddy Holly, which I thought was a bit of a weird thing to do, jumping back 20 years. And why would the readers be, you know, pop kids be interested in what happened with Buddy? Who is Buddy Holly anyway? But then you realise, as it goes on, Leo Sayers' current pop hit, Rain in My Heart, is a Buddy Holly cover. So it does kind of give a little bit of context there, but still, it's not necessarily the sort of thing that would carry on in Smash It.
I like there's a little bit just above the Bay City Rollers as well, where they're talking about old wave, new wave collaborations, which I thought was quite interesting. They're talking about Ian Hunter's production on the New Generation X album, and then the Rich Kids have asked Mick Ronson to produce their album. And Todd Robinson has got Todd Rundgren to oversee his next album. And obviously Rundgren was also just producing at that time Patti Smith's next album. So I thought that was quite nice, kind of looking back and seeing how that generation of stars, you know, kind of working with the sort of, I suppose, post-punk going into new wave artists, whether they're trying to kind of cling on to coattails or whether it's a bit of a both, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think...
I wouldn't say it's that cynical.
Yeah,
but.
With Ian Hunter, he was a big hero to a lot of the punk bands. You know, Mick Jones would go on to produce an album for Ian Hunter around about this time. And similarly, Mick Ronson, massively revered. You know, you got to think that all these punk kids were all glam fans. So why wouldn't they get Ian Hunter and Mick Ronson on board to produce stuff for them? You know, he's kind of like hoping that a bit of that fame and a bit of that glory will rub off on them, perhaps.
And it's also indicative of that kind of open, it's there and it's obviously happening, but it's also kind of the fact that it's being acknowledged is part of Smash Hit's open kind of embrace of the whole Giddy Carousel.
Yeah.
Everything is kind of open to. So what if they're, you know, impossibly aged at 34? You know, they're still welcome, you know, as we know from Elton John and Alice Cooper and, you know, featuring. Yeah. Albeit, you know, we're still waiting for this one pop star to come forward, but But in the meantime, we're open to everything, really, which was kind of didn't make it liberating or permissible for me, but it was kind of important that it should be kind of open and in its embrace of all things pop. And identifying them all as pop and allowing you to kind of, it's okay to kind of like all this stuff. And sorry, getting a bit serious.
That's all right. You're allowed to get a bit serious.
Taking pop seriously, I suppose, is really the kind of the irony of it. In some ways,
moving on now, another piece by Cliff White. We know what his bag is. It's all the disco and funk and things like that. And he poses the question, what is a Funkadelic? It's all about the P-Funk scene and all the bands that are involved in that. It's a very convoluted network of musicians, bands, etc., that he's doing his best to make sense of. But he starts the piece with Mummy, what is a Funkadelic? Which harks back to the early 70s. So it's not something that would have necessarily been on the radar of kids that were reading this magazine.
Again, it's that seriousness, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm going to explain to you what is a Funkadelic, and kind of take you through the stages. I mean, as an adult, I like a bit of Funkadelic in Parliament, but I got a bit bored trying to trace what So you think like a 12-year-old would be like, skip that bit because. It's like you say, it's quite convoluted and complicated to keep track of, really. I'm not sure I'm any the wiser now. But.
It's a good photo, though.
It is a good photo, yeah.
It is a good photo.
The visual thing is a key. I mean, again, made for smash hits in that respect, but a missed opportunity, I think, in terms of the words.
We're getting towards the end of the magazine now. We get a couple of lyrics here. We get Lay Your Love on Me by Racey, written by Chin and Chapman, who are also doing good things with Blondie at this time, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're doing great things with Racey. Again, this is one that you'll find on the video playlist, the Top of the Pops appearance, where 3 of the members of the band look like they're clones of each other.
Yeah.
That name is just a total misnomer, isn't it?
Yeah, they're as racy as
Paul Evans.
Socks. I don't know. Yeah,
they're not even as threatening and sinister as Paul Evans.
No, they're all got lovely flowing locks and things like that. It's that kind of mid-length hair that was popular in the 70s. But then they break out into this dance routine, knocking the knees together and things like that made me think that they're a bunch of clones on the run from Butlins and they found themselves on top of the pops. It's very, very summer holiday camp stuff. And then the little routine where Sue from Legs & Co. comes on and does a little bit of rock and roll jiving with the singer from Racey. And that's probably the most racy part of the thing. I'm a big Sue fan, so that was a highlight. Yeah, it's my favourite of Legs & Co. and Pants People. So that was the only highlight of that particular song, I think. I did actually have a single by Racey, but anyway.
Which one? Some Girls Do?
No, it was their version of Runaround Sue.
Right.
Yeah. But it was in one of those lucky dip bags. You used to get 10 singles for £1.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's all right.
That's my excuse anyway. And then under it we get Sally Oldfield, Mike Oldfield's sister, with her fairly sure it's a one and only hit, Mirrors.
I think so, yeah.
Which I had a vague recollection of, and then watched the video of it. Man, that's quite startling.
It's got a Tubular Bells thing going on, or an Exorcist thing going on at the beginning.
Yeah,
it's got all the way through, actually. That kind of tinkling kind of style, again, slightly sinister kind of.
And I looked to see if Mike was involved in it at any point. He's not.
No, he's not.
Part of the musicians, not part of the production, nothing. But Sally, you pointed out, didn't you, Simon, that it looks like she's dancing around in a nightie.
She's in a nightie. She's escaped from somewhere. And
escape from Paul Evans.
Yeah, well, maybe. Yeah, so that's quite possibly. Yeah, she's on the run basically, probably barefoot in her nightie.
She's trying to distract Paul Evans with mirrors. She's got a haul of mirrors, and so he doesn't know where she's gone.
And I think later on, Smash Hits might well have described her as bonkers, but of course at this point it's a bit more reserved.
And you kind of feel that this became a hit because Kate Bush had come along in 1978 and sort of paved the way a little bit for
women in the 90s.
Yeah, women in the 90s singing a bit on top of the pops and being
slightly
a bit floaty.
operatic and floaty, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I really like this song. I think it's a really good pop song. But anyway.
No, that's fine.
Sorry about that.
You don't have to apologise.
I just have to, get that out there.
Yeah, horoscopes in
Horoscopes in Smash Hits. No RSVP, but we got horoscopes.
So, what's yours, Gav?
Mine's Aries. So mine, for that issue, it says, you're feeling good and ready to cope with whatever's coming up. Not the selection stocking again, Ed. Take things as they come and you'll have a great time in the company of new friends. Well, that's right now, isn't it?
Right.
New
Well,
friends.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Simon?
I was looking forward to an early holiday.
Okay.
As a 12-year-old, I don't know how that was going to work. I was tied to the school calendar.
It was a severe winter. Did it close at all that winter? Do you think?
No, I don't think so.
Because my school certainly did.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Right. No, we lived in the balmy south. So.
No such luck.
So an early holiday, yeah, that was their prediction for me, Taurus.
And as we know, because Earth, Wind and Fire have already told us when my birthday is, I'm a Virgo, you may have been thinking about someone you haven't seen for some time. Why not arrange a surprise meeting with an old acquaintance? Well, that
Paul Evans.
Must be you, Gavin. Well, Paul Evans, I've still got the restraining order out on him, I think as most of the country. Yeah. So, yeah, I think they're quite... looking very far into the future there. And then we get another kind of misfire on a band that's in smash hits that maybe shouldn't be in smash hits, and that's the Beach Boys with that memorable song Kona Coast that we all know and love.
Classic.
Yeah. It's that one written by Al Jardine and Mike Love. And
that'll be why it's a classic.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's a photo there of the Beach Boys, well, looking like they might have been spending too much time at the barbecue on the beach rather than doing any surfing or any kind of physical activity in any way whatsoever. Whatever the opposite of Beach Boys is, that's what they are.
There's some choice lyrics in this. There's suntan beauties are everywhere, lovely island ladies with long dark hair.
You see, this is more disturbing than Paul Evans.
Yeah, well, it kind of is. And then the next verse, it says, welcome to the island Mecca. I'll learn to talk like a local, I betcha.
Yeah.
I mean, it barely rhymes.
So basically, it's the Beach Boys on holiday in Hawaii perving over the girls.
That's basically it, yeah.
And on autopilot as well.
Really is on autopilot.
Oh, well, it is absolutely, yeah. It's not even an update
My other
on
confession
California
is that
girls.
I do not like the Beach Boys. So.
You don't like the Beach Boys?
No, that's my other confession. Sorry about that.
No, I'm not a big fan.
I don't like them either.
Oh, well.
I get a headache when I listen to the Beach Boys. I enjoy their story. Yeah. I think it's one of the most fascinating.
On one level, I can appreciate.
I love Good Vibrations.
Yeah.
But
I couldn't even recall that song, and I'm sure I'll have forgotten it quite soon after today. And that brings us to the end of this very slim edition of Smash Hits. So any closing thoughts about what we've just looked through?
I think for me, just what we've already mentioned, really, the fact that you can see the seeds of where it's going, and the roadmap is kind of penciled in, but you know it's going to take a bit more time to really for it to really find its furrow and to find its groove. But I think with better singles coming out and more and more great singles coming out for a long time to come, it was really the golden age of singles was on the horizon, and there were already some great ones, and that would just really feed into smash hits, and it was kind of quite a symbiotic relationship, really. I think the great singles plus smash hits, and as you said before, making sense of those singles and also working with Top of the Pops. So for me, it was really interesting. When I first looked, to be honest, I was like, how are we going to get much chat out of this? Because it felt like, compared to what we've done on previous editions, where there's a lot more in it, and this felt like it's going to be tricky. But actually, in terms of as a marking point for where things are going to go, there's a lot to talk about. So it's been really interesting for me, I think.
Any thoughts from you, Simon?
No, I just echo what Gav said. I think it's clearly the right moment for it to lift off. And it's really interesting to kind of catch it at that very point that it's just about to develop into something, I suppose, more familiar to us as smash hits. And, you start to get the vocabulary of smash hits and all that kind of thing. But it's all there. It is there. I think it's all there. You can see the seeds of it. And I think that's what makes it interesting. That's a piece of history, I suppose, in terms of smash hits. It's just at that point. And as you say, 79 is going to be such a great year for singles. So I think timing is key, isn't it? Really, smash hits can lead, but it also does require as good a crop, perhaps even better crop than 1978 brought forth.
So in terms of you and Smash Hits, how long did you stay with the magazine?
I stayed with this magazine. My wife, in 88, and she says I was still buying it at that particular moment in time. I did fall out of love a little bit in the mid-1980s with it, but that's because I fell out of love with pop, I suppose, at that point. And for a while I became a goth, and I kind of moved over to the kind of indie stuff. But then I kind of came back to it in the late 80s. And it's interesting how the vocabulary of Smash Hits actually has found its way into the writing that I do. You find yourself sort of using words like bonkers and, sort of this and that. You just find yourself doing that, almost automatically because of that grounding. Yeah, really, really kind of important, significant kind of part of my cultural life.
And with that, our ride on the carousel is at an end. Big thanks to Simon Philo for choosing the issue we've been looking at. You can find him on Twitter. He is at @pop_society. And thanks to you for listening. Come and say hello to us at Giddy Pop Pod on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Loads of you have been in touch already, which is amazing. It's always nice to hear from you. And our website is giddypoppod.home.blog, where you'll also find the links to scans of the edition of Smash Hits that we've been looking at, along with those Spotify and YouTube playlists for that extra layer of experience. And not forgetting links to previous editions of the podcast. And we hope you can join us next time on the Giddy Carousel of Pop. Bye!